My friends, it's Doc Phineas, and welcome to the 123rd episode of Doc Talk. I'm responding to a group of people who have reached out to me, mostly former students of mine, that have been asking me a lot about this current time period that we're living in. And they're trying to make sense of it, and it's very confusing to them. It's terrifying to them to see this state of more or less the United States at this moment. I wanted to respond to that today, and I've wanted to respond to it for some time without trying to sound like I'm being political. I'm not. I'm simply approaching this from the standpoint of an archaeologist and a historian who looks at history, who looks for meaning from what we have in mythology and archaeology, and trying to paste together the story of humankind. Of course, nothing new is on the earth. We can see, as we look at history, cycles and cycles of human behavior. And we can also look at spiritual texts to see what has been predicted about these time periods. I'm always a stickler going back to what I call Plato's axiom, which is those who do not learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. So we can see that history does repeat itself over and over and over again, as if trying to teach us lessons that hopefully eventually humans can learn from history and use their higher intelligence to reposture themselves to a better future based upon the mistakes of history, the wounds of history, and all the things that we learn from history. We can look at the world right now and we can say, wow, the world is really a mess. Why is it so chaotic? Why is it such a mess? I actually had one student ask me, if you believe in God, why would God even allow the things that we see going on right now on the planet Earth? And of course, none of that is new. And when it comes to looking at these things, there's a tendency in me to look back from the perspective of ancient India, because it's one of our most ancient societies. You know, we went to India and we basically carbon dated a lot of the scriptural texts that are on walls of like caves back 10,000 years. We went over there with the team from Stanford, and I was working in Daugabad at the time in Trichurapalli in South India, and we found this mountain that was completely hollowed out. And as I went inside the circumference of the mountain and finally up to the apex of the mountain where there was a huge statue of the god Ganesha, and you know Ganesha is like the elephant-headed god. And he was basically seated at the very top of this mountain. He is god of wisdom and learning, as well as good luck and good fortune. And in there was the scriptures circling the wall in ancient Tamil, which I read, telling epically all of the things that had happened for the past 10,000 years. All of the history was recorded there, and almost poetically written in the ancient Tamil language. And as I discerned that history, I saw these patterns that look almost like modern history, where it was talking about many of the things that are in the text of the Ramayana. And, where there was actually, this demonic king named Ravana, authoritarian, priggish, a pedophile. He had these horrible qualities, a liar. And his intention was to steal Sita. And Sita was the goddess of beauty and wealth on earth. So to try to steal, let's say, all the wealth on earth and take it off to his lair, which was in Sri Lanka, in the Isle of Ceylon. And there, Ravana basically held court. He had done certain boons to Lord Brahma, and the result of those boons became this great king with many heads, many arms, and he basically went on a rampage of creating chaos and grabbing and human trafficking gods and goddesses off to his lair on this island. And if it had not been for the efforts of Hanuman, who was Lord Rama's very, very devoted, almost like Hercules in Western mythology, this very, very, very strong monkey man who went to Sri Lanka and basically set it on fire, created a huge, huge conflict, a huge war, and was able to rescue the goddess Sita back where she could be with Lord Brahma. And after 14 years of exile in the forest, they could be installed as the rightful king and queen of the world at that time. So it was very interesting to see that there have been these conflicts where these great authoritarian kings would come in and basically shut down all human liberty, shut down free speech. Everybody had to be subservient to that king. And he was basically started this kingdom with lots and lots of the Ashura, which were demons and demons. Demonic people came into the realm with him, and he was surrounded by demons. He was surrounded by these horrible people who were torturing people. He stole Lord Rama's wife, Sita, who was the goddess of beauty and wealth on earth, and took her off and hid her in a part of Sri Lanka. And it was basically Hanuman, the monkey god, who came and rescued Sita from this situation. I think a lot of this is, and it's symbolic to times that we live in, where there are, let's say, these priggish authoritarian rulers come to earth. You can look at Caligula. You can look at Nero, fiddling while Rome is burning, basically turning on his own people and setting his own kingdom on fire. You can see Henry VIII, like lobbed off the head of every woman, basically in his life. If he had a disagreement with anybody, off with your head, like he had that kind of power, authoritarian power. And, at the end, basically ended up, what happened to Henry VIII. He still never had the male heir that he wanted to his kingdom. And, of course, gave birth to the Elizabethan age through Queen Elizabeth. It was a woman who came back, reconciled the kingdom, brought back the wealth and the power of the British island again. You see these scenarios throughout history. And according to the Hindus, of course, we are in the Kali Yuga. And the goddess Kali, as you can see, she springs from the torso of Lord Shiva. You can see Shiva there. She basically comes from Shiva. She's a plenary manifestation of Shiva's rage, you might say, when you look at the mythology. And she has a ring of skulls, like a lay of skulls around her neck, because it is her job to purge the ego from mankind and to lob off their heads and make a rosary of skulls of the ego of mankind. So she's purging all of the filth and egotism and authoritarianism and all of those negative aspects that we've had of this last Yuga cycle, which according to the Hindus lasted 250,000 years. And I think what we're seeing, honestly, as I have studied so much of this for these past over 65 years that I've just been highly, highly engaged in looking at this planet, its cycles, and with the great teachers in India I worked with and throughout the world, and archaeological dig sites throughout the world, all through Africa and Indian subcontinent, all through Asia and through South America. The feeling that I come up with is that we're very much at the end of this Kali age, the Kali Yuga cycle, where we have purged ourselves, Kali demanding blood sacrifices on earth, where we've had so many wars, so much conflict, so much killing, so much degradation, and the blood of the Lamb more or less goes into the earth. You have the figure of Jesus Christ emerging, who's a perfect avatar for this age of Kali, because he is sacrificing himself. And people say, I'm healed by the blood of the Lamb. It's the blood of Jesus Christ that heals the planet. Once again, it's a blood sacrifice. And he's very much within the realm of what Carl Jung would call the myth of the corn god. The myth of the corn god is you pick the most beautiful young man in your village in ancient times, in ancient pagan times, and they would be sacrificed in the fields, oftentimes crucified or sacrificed, and their blood would go into the earth itself, because Kali was demanding a blood sacrifice, and that would guarantee fertility, would guarantee a good harvest, guarantee. So they would more or less plow a beautiful young man into the ground, into the earth, to bring fertility out of the earth. And this was a very strong idea among ancient people. And Jesus Christ is the ultimate manifestation of the myth of the corn god. This idea that earth is demanding blood, demanding the best to be sacrificed. I think we're at the end of that age, where the relevance of that is not as strong as it has been for these past 250,000 Yuga cycles, right? And we're getting ready to go into the age of Aquarius. That's the way I see it. And of course, this is coming from a triple Aquarian. I'm Sun, Moon, and Rising sign Aquarius. So I really feel very strongly about this as a penultimate in the Kali Yuga, and we're getting ready, whether we like it or not, to merge into an age of enlightenment, of peace. When you look at the scriptures of the Hindus, and they say this age, which we call Sat Yuga, the Yuga of truth, and it's supposed to last, peace would come on earth, enlightenment would come on earth for the next 1,000 years. And all of the old religions would be over. We would start a whole new idea, a fresh idea of what life on earth should be. And when the gods were asked in India, what do you want from human beings? They said only three things. The only thing we ever wanted, Krishna said, of humans was dancing, music, and art. That's it. All they wanted was dancing, music, and art, right? Art, music, and dancing. The rest of the things that manifested in humans, business, worshiping money, and grabbing money, and greed, and becoming kings, and wars, and God didn't ask for that. According to the Hindu scriptures, he only asked for music, dancing, and art. And in fact, Lord Shiva reprimanded the creator, Lord Brahma, and said, you created the human mind all wrong. You made these humans greed and envious and jealous and trying to get whatever their neighbor has and coveting their neighbor's wife or husband. And I didn't ask for that. I didn't want human beings like that. I wanted them beautiful, like the mind of a deer or the mind of an eagle. Or, I wanted them natural, living in nature and loving the planet and sharing and egalitarianism, diversity. He created such a diverse world with all these different species. If you look at those scriptures, we're pretty far off track. Especially the Kali Yugas. There'll always be wars and rumors of wars. And A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the great Hindu, mystic who founded the Hare Krishna movement, said, Earth is a middle world. There'll always be war here. There'll always be fighting between good and evil. And then we merge from Kali Yuga into Sat Yuga, into the Yuga of truth, the age of Aquarius. I think we're very much at the edge of finishing that. That's why this is such a vicious fight between the old world not wanting to change because they're afraid of losing wealth and power, little men with big egos, and money that's pretty much Maya, that's just paper. There isn't even gold standard backing up all the paper that's being circulated on Earth. And they're fighting over this and fighting over desert lands where it's just sand. There isn't even a garden there. They're fighting over the sand. They have the technology to move forward and live very ecologically on this planet. We have the power to create gardens and feed everybody. Everybody could be fed. The people that come to Earth could have a really good life of living in peace and harmony with a focus on the arts of music, dancing, and art. This is what the next Yuga cycle demands. And as I look far down the road as a psychic, that's where we're going, whether you like it or not, whether these autocrats, and what we're witnessing at this time period is the daily erosion of human liberty by the forces of this corporate kleptocracy, this autocracy, and trying to become oligarchs, trying to lock it down, there's no more free speech, you can't have free press, none of the things guaranteed in our Constitution. That's the end of the Kali Yuga, and they're trying so hard to lock it down because they're so afraid of losing their wealth, their power, whatever makes them, it's all false ego. And the unwillingness to move forward into an age where we all can be friends, we're all equal, where we all have equal opportunities, where Earth becomes a garden for feeding everybody, and we sit down and sensibly try to sustain this planet, to really regard the planet as our Earth Mother, and to really start taking care of her rather than just raping her resources and pulling everything we can out of the earth. We start looking at the Earth Mother the way that Native Americans, the way that indigenous people look at her as a sacred entity within herself, that she allows us out of her kindness and love to walk upon her face, right? So when I look at all these cultures that I've studied, all these years of travel, I've traveled and lived in 180 countries, and I've basically just combed the face of the planet to all these sacred places, from the pyramids of Uxmal and Labna Edsna, all the way to Chichen Itza, all the way down South America to Copan, and across to Africa and Timbuktu, and I've crossed the Zambezi River, all the way up the Blue Nile, all the way up the Nile, and years in Egypt, in Valley of the Kings, climbing through tombs into temples like of Dendara and the tombs of Hatshepsut and King Tut, and then on to India, where I've literally done Padayatra of the entire Indian subcontinent, all the way to the Himalayas. I look at all of this, and what I feel is we're very ready for this new age. We're getting ready to go into Sat Yuga. We're getting ready to go into the age of Aquarius, and this is just the last, wrathful sort of screaming of Ravana, not wanting to lose his kingdom, not wanting to lose his gold, not willing to let go of human trafficking and using children, using people for his own pleasure, to an age of enlightenment, an age of peace, an age of diversity and inclusion, an age in which there is a real sense of love and equality among human beings, and basically taking our planet and creating a garden that can feed us all, that's sustainable, a place where we can celebrate the arts of music, dancing, art, where people are high-minded rather than trying to think of a way to throw someone under a bus or to use someone to make money. I think we're going into an age, how can I encourage you? I love what you're doing. I love your art. I love who you are as a person. How can I give you a hug? What can I do to make you all that you can be? This is what's happening. So as I look far down that road, I just want to say to you in this moment of time, don't give up your responsibility at the moment, which is to vote, to do whatever you can do to bring in the right people, to bring justice, and to get rid of the corruption of the Kali Yuga. Let's move forward. Those of you who want to serve, get into government and do everything you honestly can do to make the world a better place, to stop the greed, the corruption, the heartache, the blood sacrifice. It's time for that to be over. And those of you who are creatives, get in there and do your art, do your dance, create your movies, create everything that you can that looks forward to a future. That's the age of Aquarius. It's time for us to embrace this and move forward. Here I am, 75 years. I don't know how much more life I have, but certainly if I have any prophetic word from all my years of study, it's that. Get ready for a new age. And those of you who are continuing to cling to these old ideas out of fear, I don't want change, I don't want to accept people, get over it. Either get with the flow, because I'm telling you the flow is coming and we're going there. Whether you like it or not, there will be immense change on Earth. But as I look at it from my perspective of that of a wizard, of someone, a time traveler, someone who has experienced so much history, and directly at archaeological digs, looking at the history of this planet, it's where we need to go. So whatever we can do to take us forwards into this age of the Satyuga, that is what we should be doing at this moment, and prepare for a great and brilliant and fabulous new age of love and peace and creativity and gorgeous, the most noble things that human beings can manifest for our beloved planet Earth. Namaste, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today on Doc Talk. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please like, follow me, subscribe, and if you can, share, and reach out to me and let me know your thinking as well. Namaste, I love you. Peace.